This looks like a job for the human bullet. Fire me, boy!
Today we're going to be talking about Bulletman, specifically his origin, but we'll probably go other places too. That clip at the start was of the Human Bullet, a parody character from The Tick, but one can see that he likely took a lot of inspiration from Bulletman. Now, time for recording, Bulletman and Bullet Girl appeared in the Superman mural in the Hall of Justice in the 2025 film, alongside a whole host of other characters, largely Silver and Golden Age ones, but not exclusively. I broke down every character in a series of shorts, but with those you can never go into as much detail as possible, or at least I can't. And some characters I just want to highlight a bit more, and James Barr, aka Bulletman, is one of them, because there's one element of his origin that tends to be pretty glossed over, and it's really interesting. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and once more we're off to the Golden Age. Now, the Human Bullet debuted in Nickel Comics #1 in 1940, which was published by Faucet Comics, which was a division of Fawcett Publications. They were most well known for being home to Captain Marvel, and later the Marvel family. And of course, Captain Marvel will get involved in that lawsuit with Superman years later, much to the detriment of Fawcett. Now, when it came to Nickel Comics, it was an experimental comic. It cost 5 cents, half of what their comics usually cost, and it also ran bi-weekly instead of monthly. It was also half as long. Bulletman gets the first story in the first issue, called The Origin of Bulletman. It's written by Bill Parker with art by Edwin J. Small Jr., and Bulletman is fairly solid and would go on to be a fairly popular character. So even though Nickel Comics, the experiment didn't work and only lasted 8 issues, he would be folded into Master Comics, started with issue 7 in 1940. He'd be there until issue 106, leaving the book in 1949, though that book will go on to issue 133 in 1953, the end of Fawcett publishing superhero titles. Now, Bulletman also had his own series, which he shared with Bullet Girl, who took on that role in Master Comics 13, although she also debuts in Nickel Comics #1. The Bulletman series lasted 16 issues and ran from 1941 to 1946. Now, as for the original Golden Age Bulletman, just what is his story? Well, they don't waste any time, they get right to it. After his little intro panel, we jump right to his police officer father getting shot. "You're too honest for this city, coppa." Pat Barr, fearless police sergeant, is ruthlessly shot down by gangsters, leaving his son an orphan. "When you're old enough, Jim, I want you to join the force and fight crooks, as all the Barrs have done." "I promise, Dad." "No pressure, son." Jim takes this promise to heart and starts studying criminology right away. He's going to do everything he can while he waits to join the academy, and he's actually very successful. He starts solving crimes as a child, and his big claim to fame is he solves a case by identifying the markings on a bullet, which earns him the nickname of Bullet, which not only is a good nickname, but they're covering all their bases for why he's going to be called Bulletman. It's not just going to be the helmet, he's also going to have extra rationale. His interest in the study of ballistics gives him the nickname of Bullet. "Hey, Bullet, why don't you try out for track today?" "Haven't time. I've got to check some new bullet markings." But ballistics isn't all that Jim is working on and studying. He's looking for a cure for crime, so he's taken the very positivist school of thought approach. That idea really started to gain steam in the late 19th century, that biology or physical characteristics were factors in criminality. Maybe James read Criminal Man. He probably did. "Then you think some germs or toxin develops a man's criminal traits?" "Yes, and if I can find the right antitoxin, I can cure crime like any other disease." For years, Barr works over his pet theory, seeking a crime cure. But all of his research and crime solving, it didn't leave Jim time for one thing: getting swole. James is not very physically strong, and he also has some other just attributes that are working against him, such as his height. So when the time comes for him to take the police test, he fails. But years spent in the college laboratory have taken their toll. Jim is rejected. "I've failed. Too short, too skinny. Bad marksmanship. This would have broken Dad's heart if he'd lived." I have to say laboratory just because his science that he's practicing in there, it's getting a bit questionable. Now, that vow that Jim's dad left him with has left him all messed up. So Jim needs to find some way to work on the police force in some capacity. So he ends up basically in forensics, but this means that he's there in a civilian capacity. And so the other officers make fun of him, ruthlessly. Psh, science, solving crimes with evidence. The officers, led by Kent, kid Bullet Barr unmercifully. "You can't catch crooks with science, Sherlock. If a rat won't talk, a rubber hose will make him." "Okay, Sergeant Kent, but I think I've got something here at last." Also, he's already caught crooks with science several times. Now, this is where we also meet Susan Kent, who will eventually become Bullet Girl. She's the daughter of the sergeant. She's introduced in a quasi-love interest capacity, but mostly it's that she's supportive and believes in him. "Don't listen to them, Jim. A uniform doesn't mean anything." "Sure, I know. But if this serum turns out right, there won't be any crooks pretty soon." Only Susan, Kent's daughter, and secretary to the chief, believes in Jim. Now, Jim has some mad scientist inclinations. When it comes time to test the serum, he decides that the only safe subject is himself, even though, based on his own thesis, he is a terrible test subject. He doesn't seem to have any criminal inclinations, but he injects himself and seemingly nothing happens until the next morning when he wakes up and he's literally bursting out of his pajamas. Suddenly, he's big and strong. "What's happened? Either my pajamas have shrunk or I've grown." Overnight, the serum has destroyed all the germs and toxins in Jim's body, thus released from the poisons which sap other men's strength. Jim's muscles and nerves develop with amazing speed. His chest deepens, he grows taller and heavier, and his body becomes as hard and strong as steel. The serum has done its work. Pesky germs, stopping all of us from becoming superheroes. It's a much more fun myth than the whole 95% of your brains, you'll become an unhinged telepath. Amazed, Jim tests his new strength. I've always wanted a window in that wall. He also realizes that he is a lot bigger now, so he goes out and buys some oversized clothes. So hopefully no one's gonna notice that he grew taller. He also decides that he's just gonna tell everybody that the serum was a failure, that it didn't work, and he's not gonna tell them what it did do. And so he goes with this kind of lie by omission. He's bending the truth to conceal, and like the best lies, there's some truth in it. The serum doesn't seem to have the ability to cure crime, although again, he was a poor test subject. But now he's concerned about what would happen if this serum actually fell into the hands of criminals, because it seems to be able to make a person reach their full potential by eliminating all the germs in the body. And he feels they'd be some kind of super criminals. He's completely abandoned the idea that it could cure crime. And so he decides that he better keep this to himself. Oh, Jim, your experiment didn't fail, did it? Yes, Susan, I'm afraid it did. Jim decides to destroy the serum for the sake of humanity. One nice thing is that it shows that Jim did tell people that he was going to do this, which is a good idea. It means if it had gone wrong, he was prudent enough to let people know so they could go check. Also, that whole destroyed for humanity's sake, ignore that, because later stories are going to. Now, Jim learns from Susan that there's a gangster who's barricaded himself in his hideout, and he's sitting on loads of dynamite, and no one can get near him. So Jim decides that this looks like a job for somebody, him. He's inspired by a newspaper headline to become a superhero, because there's this newspaper that's asking a bit of an odd question, which is, do they need a new Robin Hood? I don't know. I associate Robin Hood much more with robbing the rich to feed the poor, rather than just stopping crime in general. But you know what? Different times, and it's good enough for Jim. This way, he can fulfill his father's dying wish, because it's not enough to stop crime with science. That serum built up my brain as well as my body. Funny how easy it is to design this gravity regulator helmet. From the resources of headquarters, Jim salvages a costume that will strike fear to evildoers, and a new Robin Hood is born. If this helmet works, I'll be able to fly by making the force of gravity work in any direction. Now that last page said, strike fear. I suppose I am really concerned about the scarf he's wearing that's gonna get caught on something. Also, those are some really pointy jawed purse. It really is giving, I pulled stuff I found in the lab. People are gonna wonder where pieces of their clothing are. Whose scarf is that? Now Jim has to literally leap into action because someone comes and knocks on the door and he can't risk revealing his identity. So he just has to go and test and hope it works. And if it doesn't, I guess he's dead. But don't worry, the gravity helmet, it works. And so he's off to stop crime, and people down below, including a reporter, say that he's like a bullet. He's shot off like one. Hence, he'll become Bulletman. His helmet also allows him to burst through walls like the Kool-Aid Man, which he'll do a lot.
Oh, yeah!
What? Sorry, but the door was locked. The gangster lights the dynamite, which leads to my favorite panel in this particular story, after his costume reveal, of course, which is him hurling the bomb away from the city, yelling "4" at the top of his lungs. Now, Jim gets to solve more than one crime this issue. You get double Bulletman action, even though you get less pages. That same issue he takes on Black Mask, Faucet Comics edition, who kidnaps the Kens. And Black Mask's plan is actually fairly elaborate and creative. He's got the head of a lunatic asylum in his pocket, and he's kidnapping officers and officials to drive them insane. But what do you expect to gain by this? I'm obeying Black Mask's orders. If we can show the city authorities are helpless against crooks, new officials will be appointed, and they'll be Black Mask's stooges. A fiendish plan to discredit the city's police force. Now, what's really interesting about this is it's gonna go through the issues 1, 2, 3, which is that Black Mask is Stephen Dune, who is also a newspaper publisher who would run headlines to try and help things along in his favor. He's trying to influence public opinion, but what's really funny is that the paper that he runs is The Trumpet, which is the one that ran the Robin Hood headline that inspired Jim in the first place. Now, back in issue 1, Bulletman is able to rescue everyone from the asylum, and the paper, The Trumpet, runs a special headline. Who is the Bulletman? Kidnapped police rescued by Mystery Man. The Trumpet offers $1,000 reward for photo of Bulletman. That's so much for 1940. I'll tell them to send the $1,000 to the police pension fund. Jim mails a photo of himself in his Bulletman costume to Stephen Dune, the Trumpet's publisher. It's been a week now since the Trumpet offered a reward for a picture of Bulletman. I guess he just doesn't like publicity. Why don't you send in your picture of Bullet? You've got the same name, almost. I don't think the Trumpet would print it, Sergeant. But Jim wonders why the newspaper hasn't printed the Bulletman photo. He decides to find out. And so that's our setup mystery for the next issue. It's a fairly decent hook, at least intellectually. It's not bombastic or loud, but it is intriguing. And this is a solid start for Bulletman. You get to know who Jim is, what his motivation is, what his power set is. You get to see him use it more than once. You get to see members of his supporting cast. It just really clearly showcases him and what he's going to be about. If you can get behind the bullet helmet, and after this I'm going horseback riding costume, it really is a decent start. I can see why he managed to survive and get folded into other comics rather than just being entirely canceled. Now, as mentioned, Susan Kent is going to become Bullet Girl, and that happens in Master Comics 13. Now, last issue 13 is very difficult to find outside of potato quality, despite being a very important issue for Bullet Girl. Time of recording, of course. There's a decent amount of preservation of early Fawcett outings, and much of them are in the public domain. And actually, Bulletman and Bullet Girl are too, technically, the Fawcett versions at least. And they were actually Fawcett's most popular characters after Captain Marvel and the Marvel family. However, by the time DC leased them in 1972, they had lapsed into the public domain. That's how AC Comics got to reprint their Golden Age adventures, and it's why Hasbro was able to make a Bulletman figure. However, over time, DC has retconned them into their own timeline and given Bulletman an origin that is more in line with DC mythology, which we will get to. Now, back in Master Comics number 13, we get the origin of Bullet Girl, and right at the start, she learns Jim was Bulletman. So he just decides to come clean, and she's mad because she says that she could have been helping this entire time. We also see that Jim is keeping a copy of that crime serum that he said that he destroyed all the way back in Nickel Comics number 1. He tells Susan that this does not work for a girl and then heads off. This prompts her to take the serum herself, take one of his spare helmets, and follow off and become Bullet Girl. What's fascinating about this is that, and I've done this too, so I'm part of the problem, is that when this is discussed, it tends to be said that he made her a helmet and then let her become Bullet Girl, which is very different than what you see in issue 13. It just has a very different energy, him giving versus her taking. So if there is an exact issue where he makes her one, or it's retconned to him having made her one, I'm not familiar with what it is, but if you are, please leave it down below. That would be amazing. It would be fascinating. I love little details like that. And if not, then we have issue 13 where she just upends. Actually, it's just an upend. She injects it. It's an injectable, and then takes the helmet. Now, they do get over the whole she's a girl bit pretty quickly, and they move on to more of a Jim needs to get used to / remember that he has a partner kind of dynamic. And then we have Susan getting annoyed that she's getting left behind or left out for a bit, but very quickly he just includes her and they're on very equal footing. And you'll even have issues where in one story she's saving him, another story he's saving her, and they end up working really well together. You will have some period-typical she's a girl moments, but not as many as some may think. I'm getting out of here. Hey, who's that up there? Meet Bullet Girl. Sorry, Bullet Man, but I followed you. Doesn't matter. I'm rather glad you did. And Susan becomes really intense about being Bullet Girl. She's really into it and takes it really seriously. A good example of this is her own dramatic vow that she makes in Bulletman number 1 in the last story when it looks like Jim has died. Farewell, Bulletman, but I won't stop. I'll go on playing the game just as you would want me to. I'll keep on fighting all crime. There is always something so interesting to me about the phrasing of play the game when they have characters use it in this context. I have a soft spot for characters who present it in that light. Of course, it can just be a turn of phrase like the whole let's dance before a fight banter, but you can also get really deep into it if one chooses to, and have it have an impact on how they approach crime fighting, or crime if it's a villain who's taking that stance. Now, Bulletman and Bullet Girl's romance tends to also be something that is talked up a bit when one is discussing their books, and while it's kind of there and can be inferred, it's not really this big grand thing. Although in Bulletman 1, one of the villains yells that she's his girlfriend. You can see why they make that assumption. They have matching outfits. This is one of those things though where over time it is positioned as much more overtly romantic. DC chooses to cement this when they appear in Justice League 135 when DC introduces Shazam's Squadron of Justice of Earth S, which was the designated Earth for Fawcett characters at that time. And in there, when they give the backstory of Bulletman and Bullet Girl, they say that they're married. Now, Bulletman and Bullet Girl would also be known as the Flying Detectives, and he'd be just the Flying Detective if he was alone. Because that deductive element, it's never fully taken away from him, and it actually gets played up a bit more as the series goes on. Now, when it comes to Bulletman and his origin, what tends to be remembered about him is that helmet. It is very eye-catching. What tends to be less remembered is the enhanced super strength. And in all fairness, the comics, the original Golden Age ones, could play a bit fast and loose with how strong both him and Bullet Girl were from issue to issue. Sometimes they could take so many hits, other times one punch. There he was out there getting enhanced with super serum around the exact same time as Captain America, predating him by a few months, although in all fairness, getting enhanced by vitamins and serums, it was all the rage at the time. Now, in the World's Finest issue, 255 from 1979, in the Captain Marvel story Dream Dancer, which was written by E. Nelson Bridwell, who loved canon, the pencils were by Don Newton, and the inks, Kurt Schaffenberger. Colors, Adrian Roy. They would retell their origins, and it would very much be the same as their Golden Age ones from Nickel Comics, just kind of combining Nickel Comics number 1 and Master Comics 13. They even keep some of the lines from the original. Then came the day he lost his helmet, and I got my first good look at Bulletman with no disguise. Jim Barr? Bulletman? You are one and the same. You found me out, Susan. He told me how his serum increased his physical and mental capacity, and he had used his new brain power to develop the gravity helmet. I used the same serum and his spare helmet to become Bullet Girl. You know, they also don't really play up the fact that they are mentally enhanced too. Now, DC brought Bulletman into post-crisis continuity in 1995 in The Power of Shazam #8, written by Jerry Ordway with art by Kurt Swan and Peter Krause, inks Mike Manley, colors Glenn Whitmore. And he features in that series as a recurring character. He has a couple of plots that are centered around him, and also his daughter, his and Bullet Girl's daughter, is introduced, Deanna Barr. And she does don her mother's costume, but she'll go by Windshear. There's also a super awkward plot where Billy as Captain Marvel is kind of going out with his daughter, and so he has Billy as a child kidnapped to stop it. Any romance with Billy gets pretty awkward pretty fast over at DC. Also, just as a side note in general, Power of Shazam was a very decent comic. Now, when it comes to the more DC-ified origin, it's not something you're really going to see on the pages of Power of Shazam or Starman, where he also featured, but you do get to see it in the details of the encyclopedia, the updated and expanded edition. They have an entry and it reads as follows. Bulletman. Jim Barr, the son of a slain Fawcett City police officer, developed a variant of Hawkman's Thanagarian nth metal and Hourman's Miraclo / steroid compound and took flight as Bulletman. So that's really interesting because now they're taking things that he did and they're assigning them as derivatives of other characters in the DC universe. Sorry, Jim. They also align him much more with the All-Star Squadron and World War II, whereas his adventures were much more just kind of detective-based for the most part. Although, of course, during the wartime era, you will have those types of stories. So in conclusion, Bulletman's interesting, his comics are interesting, and I want to talk about him more, and there's more to him than just the shape of his helmet. What do you think of Bulletman and Bullet Girl, the Flying Detectives? Share your thoughts down below, and also share with me, what comic detail were you convinced was entirely true, only to have the rug pulled right out from under you? I don't know, I'm really hyped today for some reason. Also, are there any other origins on the mural that you kind of want to explore? Let me know, because it's fun to look back at these things. As always, thanks so much for taking some time today to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it. Please do the YouTube things, like, share, comment, subscribe, and there'll be more videos coming soon, and I'll see you there. Bye-bye.